Static being is more real than dynamic becoming. The former encompasses actual forms within manifestation, whereas the latter can only encompass transitory states between forms, which are empty without reference to forms. Example: think of water, a form. Now think of steam. Now think of water being turned into steam. The former two mentioned subjects are forms. The latter, evaporation, is not a form. Evaporation is merely an intermediary state between forms, e.g. water and steam, and is meaningless and empty without referring to them. Hence, static being is the only thing which is actually real, and becoming only to the extent that it includes something or some things related to being. However, everything in the material world and even most of the contents of the mind are in a non-stop state of becoming. This makes it seemingly impossible to discern any pure static forms as they actually are. The thing itself cannot be known when it is constantly changing, because it cannot be really pinpointed as being any particular thing when what it even is changes every instant. This reigns true even internally for ourselves. As far as the mind is concerned, it is difficult to think of any parts of the mind encompassed by the brain, memory, cognition, etc., that remain static for prolonged periods of time, if at all. One thought is always begetting another, one emotion another. Even with memories, they are always recalled as an animated sequence of moments. Nonetheless, static being is not only real, but, as demonstrated above, it is the only thing which is real. Yet our perception of constant becoming and our seeming inability to interface with pure static being suggests that we are very out of touch with reality. The severity of this has been described as Maya or Samsara in the Eastern doctrines. It's not just that we can't see being, it's that we can't even think it, because our very own minds are in becoming. It is both greater and more important, yet more elusive and harder to realise than any ideological truth, any scientific truth, any red pill so-called that you can think of. Even science is obviously useless for finding this hidden red pill. Science is just a thing in becoming, a scientist doing studies and experiments on other things in becoming, different types of matter. Still, it is obvious to those up to date with the latest science, everything in the universe seems to be in becoming. Atoms constantly vibrate, quarks appear and disappear on an energy field infinitely fast, and all of this matter is itself relative to one's position in space-time. Yet religion, science, in fact every truth-seeking system seems to be subtly or subconsciously aware of this problem based on what they're trying to discover or achieve. God, for example, according to theology, does not change. He is the immutable cause of all change. The truth, according to science, does not change. What was true yesterday is true today and will remain true tomorrow. And the good, according to ethics, does not change. It's always wrong to murder. It's always wrong to rape. Whether or not you actually believe in God or the truth or the good is irrelevant. The more noticeable thing about each of these systems is that their end goal and their support rests on something which is always in static being. This is the ever-emerging constant. It is the most valued thing everywhere, the highest thing, clearly, but we cannot observe it. So, what do we do then, seeing that we are so obviously stuck in the mud? Here is a suggestion, a solution finally. If there's any hope for knowing reality as it is, as being, and from there on actually finding out for ourselves if one of the things associated with static being actually does exist, God, the truth, etc., then it cannot be discovered via any outside observation of material phenomena merely by faith alone in the way of religion or deductive reasoning in the way of science. It's an issue of consciousness. We cannot perceive the thing we're looking for. So what needs to be done on the inside, seeing it as it's an issue of consciousness, is we firstly need to dominate and slow down the becoming processes internally. Then, when we ourselves are no longer in becoming, or at least less in becoming, then we can be more easily relied upon to see through everything else in becoming as unmoved movers, as still seers, as unobservable observers. The end goal would be to slow down all becoming processes of the mind to a point where only being remains within it. If we do choose to enter a becoming phase, however, then we and we alone must be the ones who initiate it and choose to enter it in total control. Anything learnt which doesn't at first involve doing this is at best a lesser truth and at worst not true at all. And so it is obvious that some fiery form of internal reprogramming is required. The only question is how. Drugs and brain surgery won't do it, as this can only have an effect on neural pathways, which, like the rest of matter and the rest of the body, is in becoming. And besides, your average weed acid or mushrooms addict probably isn't thinking too hard about the above problem anyways. The only method known to us which directly addresses this issue in our language as we've described it comes from the world of ancient spiritual tradition. It's known in different names as initiation. Traditions normally have what's known as an esoteric doctrine. It's normally concealed, it's normally not revealed to everyone, but the goal is to, rather than try to better understand the world outside, like a scientist would, looking at matter, looking at atoms, chemicals, animals, in order to understand reality. It's a purely internal science which involves changing the level of consciousness, so phenomena can be looked at through a new internal lens. Examples of these sorts of systems include the Jewish Kabbalah, traditional Hindu yoga, Buddhist asceticism, and other like systems. It's a type of practical metaphysics. Religion itself does have utility here to the extent that if it includes a comprehensive system of metaphysics, then what it can do through faith is drive someone to perform the correct inner actions towards initiation. But strictly speaking, faith in God is an accessory towards the goal here. Pure faith is a becoming conditioned experience, and so, like they say, there's no salvation via faith alone, no faith without works, and as they also say, God helps those who help themselves. But wait a second, how do you even know that this initiation thingy works? Prove it. Prove it with science. We cannot prove it at all. The realization of static being, because it's not involving, say, if I've discovered a new chemical as a scientist, I can show a chemical, but if I've looked at static being and I've understood it, I can't show it to other people who are themselves in becoming for the above described reasons, and the narrator admits that he has never left pure becoming and has never seen static being himself, even if he can intellectually, abstractly sort of prove static being is real. And it's not just me who has this problem. The OG Buddha himself, Prince Siddhartha Gautama, knew this, and this is why he never overtly described what Nirvana is, only the instructions for how to achieve it. Nirvana, if you don't know, it's a purely negative term. It only means to blow out, but what is being blown out, so-called, and what's left after you blow it out is up to imagination. So the Buddha telling you that he's enlightened and he's seen ultimate reality has just as much to show for it as your latest neo-spiritual scam artists. So the only real proof is to attempt initiation and to see if it works. This requires working through a barrage of traditional texts just to understand how to undergo the correct processes in order to do it. Maybe even in different languages, because it's a very niche knowledge. You'll need to seek out sages, Brahmins, rabbis, bash your head through meditation and mantras, probably solitude and ceremonial occult rituals, all of this done with a specific focus on the subtle parts of human experience lurking just under the corners of our eyes, where total truth and total insanity lie next to each other at opposite ends of the sharpest angle. That is all we can even say about how.